Hey guys, this is Victor with Dapper Dash, and today the tutorial that I want to share with you is actually something that I've had to learn how to do recently. The topic that we're going to be covering today is how to use local images from your computer and combine them with some sort of data table so that you can use them in Power BI for either display or for slicing or for filtering. Let me explain what I mean by that. So traditionally, when I've worked with images in Power BI or in my tables, I usually use some sort of web URL, right? So I find a logo that I like. I usually you can copy the image URL, and what happens is you usually end up pasting it somewhere like this. So here I have different NBA teams, and here I have their logos, right? So if I go to this link here, it'll take me to the Denver Nuggets logo. And so that's fine and dandy when you're referencing images that are on the web. But what happens if I have local images? So if these images are saved on my desktop and they're not on the web anywhere, maybe it's custom icons that I've created or pictures of my home, how can I insert those into a table so that I can use as maybe a visual for a slicer, or I can use as some sort of image on my graph? So we're going to learn how to do this using 3 different methods. So method number 1 is going to be my simple method. And that's method number 1 is convenient when you're working with a small number of files. So maybe you only have 4 images that you want to load. And this works best usually when the images are small. Usually they're icons size images. So let me show you how method number 1 works. If you run into any errors, don't worry. Chances are we'll either resolve the errors with method number 2 or method number 3. If it works with you for method number 1, great. If you run into problems, stay tuned for method number 2 and method number 3, and we'll see if we can help resolve those. I wanted to give a shout out to Gerard Bruckle on BI and Data. This blog here, which is also in the description, is actually where I went to get the base for how to accomplish this. And so he has a blog titled Storing Images in a Power BI Analysis Services Data Model, which is what we're going to be doing today. Now, he doesn't exactly walk through all the 3 different methods, but this is where I took the base for what I'm going to be explaining to you today. So definitely go check out this particular blog and follow along in case you get lost in anything that I say. But let's go check out method number 1 first. Okay, so for the simple method that I'm going to show you, what I have here is a graph of different crypto coins, the high and low market value for the day. So you can see that as I switch through the coins, right, I'm looking at Bitcoin's market high and low value, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Doge. And what I want is, as I slice through these filters, I want to be able to use these local images that I have here and display them on some sort of picture. I've downloaded this simple image view from the marketplace, and I'm going to add it to my workbook. So we're going to bring it in here, and what I want is, if I go to my data set, I have this picture column, but it's blank right now. So if I were to bring this in, right, there's nothing. But as I scroll through these, I want this to become one of the icons that I have. So here's my data set, right? The images are blank. And we're going to go into Google. All you're going to do is Google image to base 64 or follow the link in the description. And I'm going to use this website here, this base64-image.de. What this is going to do is it's going to convert my images into this base 64 format that you see here. And Power BI is able to recognize this as the image that I'm wanting to use. Now remember, I'm working with small images, right? 256 by 256 pixels, and the final image that comes out is only 2.76 kilobytes, right? So this simple method works best when you're working with a small number of files, small images. Typically, you're working with icons. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the image, right? Now that it's been converted like this, We're going to copy it. So in this case, we're copying Ethereum. We're going to paste it into our picture column, and we're going to go back. Copy Litecoin, paste it here, and copy Bitcoin, paste it into the Bitcoin, and the last one we're going to do is we're going to copy Doge, and we're going to paste it right there. Then I'm going to hit save. We're going to go back into Power BI. All right, so I'll show you where that is. So here's our crypto, right? We have nothing in the picture. We're going to refresh that. And now I have the images that I've copied over. And keep in mind, the other thing you want to do is, because these are uncategorized, you want to set the image to an image URL. Okay. Now if we go back, there it is. So there's Bitcoin, right? If I switch over to Ethereum, I now have Ethereum, Litecoin, and Doge. And so this is the simple method. Once again, this works best when you're working with a small number of files. And the reason I say that is because if you have 100 images, the last thing you want to be doing is going through here and copying 100 times, copy, paste, all the way down, however many rows, just to get it to work like this. Hope you enjoyed that one. We're going to move into method number 2. So that was method number 1. And that one's the most simplest one, pretty straightforward. Where we run into method number 2 is, what if I don't just have a small number of files? What if I'm not working with just 4 or 5 images? What if I'm working with 100 images or 30 images? Or in the example that I gave of the NBA teams, I need 30 or 32 logos from a football league or an NBA league. When you run into something like that, it's not quite simple to just go to the website, drop the images, and then start copying and pasting one by one. So that's where I'm going to go into method number 2, which is how to have Power BI automatically convert those images into a base 64 format so that you can use it and you don't have to do any of the manipulating yourself. The only thing you have to do is set up the function. I'll explain, and we'll go into method number 2. So here we are for method number 2. So for method number 2, I'm going to be working with NBA data. So what you'll see here is I have the spreadsheet that has the NBA teams. It has their rank in terms of points per game for the 2019 season. And what I want to do is I want to be able to bring my icons, right? Link them up to my data set. Where this is different from method number 1 is the last thing I want to do right now is grab 30 images, copy them over right into our base 64 converter, and then start copying and pasting one by one and finding the right team and pasting it, finding the right team and pasting it. So that's the time consuming part. If you only work with like 5 or 6 images, then method number 1, it's perfect. It's not going to take you more than a minute to bring these in here and copy them over, and you have them right in your display and they're available. But for method number 2, where we're working with a large number of files, what we're going to do is we're going to go into transform data, and you're going to right click on the query. You're going to create a new query. It's going to be a blank query. You're going to go to advanced editor, and you're going to paste this code into the advanced editor. Now what this code's going to do is we're going to look at the folder where our images are at, right? It's going to bring this in as a binary column, and then we're going to turn that binary column and we're going to convert it to base 64, essentially doing the same thing that this website does, but we're going to be doing it within Power BI. Now, one potential place where your code may differ than mine is if you look at my images here, my images are .png files. The code that I pasted here coming from the blog, they convert their images from JPEG. I'm going to change mine to PNG because those are the images that I'm working with. If you're working with JPEG images, you can leave it as JPEG. And that looks good. I'm going to hit done. Now this code, if it's too small to see, it is in the description. So go down into the description under method number 2, custom function code, and just copy it and paste it. So I'm going to hit done. I'm going to rename this to PNG image converter. So now I have my function. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to import my images. So I'm going to go to New Source. You're going to go to More. We're going to go to the Folder option. So here we have Folder. We're going to hit Connect. You're going to browse to the folder where you have your images that you're wanting to, convert in bulk. So mine is the MVA images. I'm going to hit OK. Hit OK. Now when you get to this screen, the next thing you want to do is, so here's our binary data that we're going to convert into our base 64. So we're going to hit Transform Data, and then you're going to go to Add Column, and you're going to invoke Custom Function. We're going to use the custom PNG function that we just created, or JPEG if that's what you're looking at. So our new column name is going to be, I don't know, we can name it just image. We're going to use our PNG image converter, and it's going to be what binary column. In this case, it's content. It kind of automatically detects it. We're going to hit OK. And now if you look over, we have our image column, and it's in the same format as our method 1 images would have been. So that's great. It's going to create a new data set, right? This isn't tied to our table just yet. And so one of the things that you want to do, this is going to make it a lot easier, is if you notice, I named my images the same name as the mascots on my NBA team. So if the mascot for the Milwaukee Bucks here, I put Bucks, my image is also named Bucks. And that's so that I have essentially a key column, right? Like a foreign key and a primary key type of column, so that I can join these later and be able to use them. Hit Close and Apply. It's going to bring in our MBA data right there. And remember, our MBA data, which is our folder of images, this name column has our images named as blazers.png or mascot.png. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a foreign key here in our MBA data. This is our primary data. Okay, so we're going to create a new column. I'm going to name this image key, and it's going to equal our mascot name and .png. Now, the reason I'm doing this, if I didn't explain it correctly earlier, is in our picture data that we imported, the name of our picture, and I did this on purpose so that I could join this simpler, the name of our picture is our mascot name from our NBA data, so Rockets, Clippers, Blazers, Wizards, .png. Right, so our custom function imports these images, and it creates a name column named whatever the name of the image is. And I know that the name of the image is, I named it the same as the mascot so that I could join it. So that's what we're going to do to our NBA data. What we did is we created an image key where we took the mascot name and we added .png so that I can now join these two on image key to name. But essentially, in order to link your images to your data, try to name your images something simple that might also be found in your data set, so that all you have to do to join them is add .jpeg or .png or .gif or whatever it is that your images format is. So now I've joined them, and now the next step is to actually bring in the image into my data set. So I'm going to create a new column, and this is going to be my images now, or images, and it's going to equal. Once you have two tables joined, you can reference a column from another table and bring it in by using what's called a related function. So it returns a related value from another table. So because my tables are joined, I can now go to my MBA dataset, which has my images, and bring in the image, because that's what we named it using our custom function. So now on my images, I'm going to make sure this is set to an image URL. And now when I go to create my slicer, I'm going to bring in my image. So there they are. And now when I bring in my custom simple image from the marketplace, I'm going to use my image as well. And there it is now. This one's going to default to the wizards because I don't have anything selected yet. But once I start selecting, for example, Denver, there's the Denver Nuggets. Here's Denver and their points per game. Here's the Houston Rockets. Here's Memphis. Right. Here's the Thunder. And so that's method number 2. Method number 2, typically also you're working with icon images. When you start working with bigger files, you're going to start running into some problems, and that's what we're going to address in method number 3. Okay, so finally we arrive at method number 3. Method number 3 is going to be the most complicated of them. So go look in the description. I have the link to the blog that explains method number 3. You're going to be able to find the code. You're able to copy and paste. I'm not going to walk in detail on what all the pieces of the code mean. So most of this, you're just going to have to go read on your own and copy and paste the code. But I'm going to show you how it works. Because method number 3 is the method we use when your images are too big. And what I mean by that is if you have a high resolution image, or if you have a fairly large, maybe even like 300 by 300 pixel image might be too big to be able to use methods number 1 and number 2. So I would say use method 1 first if it's a small number of images. If it's a lot of images, use method number 2. But if you start running into problems where your image doesn't render all the way, then chances are your image is too big to be able to import it using methods 1 and methods 2. So that's where method 3 comes into play. Method 3 is for working with really large or high resolution images. When you convert the image into base 64, usually it's a really long string that represents that image. If that string is greater than 32,766 characters, that is the max that an Excel cell will hold, and that's also the max that a Power BI column will import. So if you're using Power BI to import a column that has a value greater than 32,766 characters, it'll truncate that column. And that's usually where we get our images that only partially render. And that's where we have to use method number 3. So let me go into method number 3. Chances are if you're having issues, it's probably with something that we're gonna learn how to fix using method number 3. So let's go into that. Okay, so here we are at method number 3. And before we actually get going on method number 3, I'm going to show you why methods number 1 and methods number 2 do not work, or why, if you've stuck around this long, you may be encountering problems with your own images. So here I have real estate data. All right, so maybe I'm a real estate agent and I have 4 houses that I'm currently listing. 2 in Arizona, 1 in Texas, 1 in California, right? I have the address, the price of the house, the number of beds and bathrooms, and their square footage. And I labeled them house number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for simplicity, I labeled the matching images as houses 1, 2, 3, and 4. It is a 640 by 426 though, so this is much bigger than a normal icon that we've been working with. And it's a high resolution image, right? There's a lot of colors. This is an actual image, not just like a vector drawn image. This is going to be important as to why we use method number 3 as opposed to methods number 1 and 2, or why you may be experiencing problems with methods number 1 and 2. So first we're going to try method number 1. So we're going to go ahead and create maybe a picture column. Right, method number 1, remember, we're going to copy it. We're going to go into here. Actually, we're just going to drop them into here. Copy image number 4. right? The very quick way to do it, copy image number 1, image number 2, and image number 3. Save my data set. All right, so we're going to refresh our data. And you can see we've brought in the picture. Remember, we want to make sure our data category is an image URL. So for method number 1, I'm going to create a slicer here in the middle for both methods, where I'm going to filter based on house number. Okay, so we're on house number 1, 2, 3, 4. So now remember, we want to use our image, our simple image, because we want to be able to look at our picture using method number 1. So we're going to bring in our picture into the image URL, and that's what we're getting. If you're getting this error here, it's not a problem with method number 1 or method number 2. It's a problem with how big your file size is, and it's a problem with how Power BI and Microsoft, like Excel, handles really, really large data text, I guess. If I go look in here, so this is a really, really big text string. How big exactly? We're going to go look. If I go open up a Notepad++, and I paste this in here, and I go to the very end, if you look closely, it's going to go, the length of this string is 32,769 characters long. Power BI and Microsoft Excel have a limit how many characters you can have in a column. So Microsoft Excel has a cap at 32,766. That's the max amount of text that you can have in a cell in Excel. Power BI is very similar. If you import data, and it doesn't matter where you're importing it from, if you're importing it from Excel, if you're importing it from a CSV, or if you're importing it from SQL, if your column has more than 32,766 characters, it's going to truncate it. So that's what's happening with method number 1. So this text string here is actually greater than 32,766 characters. I mean, if we go to like the very end here, right, it ends with like a M6H5 or something. That's not the same ending that we have here, and that's because that is being truncated. Okay, if I go back into here and I copy this image and I bring it into here, you can see how much greater, how much longer this image is than the top one. That's because Excel has a limit on the number of characters that you can have in a cell, 32,766. Power BI is the same way. If I were to try to load this into Power BI, it would also truncate it right around there. And the problem with that is you get images that aren't fully developed. You only have a portion of the code needed to render this image. So, okay, so what if we go to method number 2? All right, method number 2, where we use our custom function to try to import the image. So yeah, let's try that. So for method number 2, we're going to go transform data, and we're going to do this pretty quick. Remember, we're going to create a blink query. Going to go to advanced editor, and we're going to paste our code. And these images are JPEG images, I believe. Yep, these are JPEG images, so I'm going to leave this as is. I'm going to hit done. Image convert. I'm going to name that function. We're going to go grab our folder that has our images. And we're going to let the custom function convert it. And we're gonna hit OK. Remember, there's just 4 images, and I put the names the same as they appear in my house number here, so that if I want it, remember, to link them together using a key, I can link the 2 tables together. But we're not gonna do that for right now. We're just gonna transform data. We're gonna go to add column, invoke custom function, image, we're just going to name this image, and we're going to use our image convert on the content, hit OK, and you'll see that it's converted our image. Once I hit close and apply, this didn't work, so we're actually using our second data set, which is our folder that has our images that we've converted using our custom function. But because Power BI has the same limitation that Excel has, where it'll only pull in a record up to 32,766 characters, we're going to see if we encounter the same problem. So I'm going to create a simple image, place that here. I'm going to bring in another filter for method 2, where we're going to bring in the name. We're going to filter just the just so we can see image number 1 or something. And we're going to bring in our image. But our image has to be image URL. So if we go to our simple image and we bring in the image, we run into the same thing. So house number 4, same issues, right? This is using method 1 versus method 2. It's the same thing. We run into the same limitation of the number of characters that we can bring in from a column. Method number 3 is a unique way to try to circumvent the problem, the limitation of only those 32,000 characters that we can import. So here we are at method number 3, right? I have my real estate data. Here's my slicer of which house I'm looking at. We don't have the image yet, but we'll bring it in, right? Here's my house in California, 7 beds, 9 baths. Here's one of my houses in Arizona for 11 million, 5 beds, 12 baths, and then here's the address. But now we want to be able to bring in the image, which we realized, right, that we can't do using methods 1 and 2. So we're going to go to method number 3. So for method number 3, we're going to go to transform data. It's going to be another custom function. It is in the description, so go ahead and copy the custom function in the description under method number 3, and we're going to bring it in. So once we get here, we're going to go ahead, same thing, new source, blank query, advanced editor, paste the custom function. Now this one I'm not going to walk through as much. The custom function is in the description, but it's also in the blog, which I have the link to under method number 3 as well, and that's for working with larger images. The only thing you're really going to have to change is you're going to have to set this to the folder where your images are at, right? So mine are here, and so that's what I've set this folder path to. Everything else, you can kind of read what it's doing if you want to try to understand it yourself. But essentially what we're doing is we're going to go through each image, and we're only going to we're going to convert it into our base 64, but we're only going to grab the first 30,000 characters and then create a new row with the next 30,000 characters and a new row with the next 30,000 characters. So that way we can circumvent the problem that Power BI and Excel have of only being able to insert the 32,000 text characters. So in this case, we're going to split it into 30,000 characters. I'm not going to explain the rest of this. I'm just going to hit done, which is also what you should be doing. Really, you should just be setting this to where your images are at. So now it's imported. Here's image number 1. And image number 1 is essentially 8 rows long. Here's the first 30,000 characters, then the next 30,000 characters, and so on and so on and so on until here. The function also adds an index. And this index is going to be useful because we're going to concatenate these characters back together using the index order, right? We want to make sure that this is the first 30,000 characters, followed by this one, followed by this one, followed by this one. so the image renders in the correct order. And that's why this index column is created. So here we have our, image index or something. This is good. I'm going to go ahead and hit close and apply. So now the next part that we're going to do is, now that we have our image index, we're going to create a measure that's going to combine all of that together. Go ahead and hit new measure and go ahead and name your measure. In this case, I already have a column called pic in here. I'm going to just name this image. Okay, not a column, right? This has to be a measure because we have to use DAX to combine all of our different rows now for our image. We're going to write the following function. If, open parentheses, okay, if, and I'm going to set this to, this variable is going to be image equals to if. And then has one value. So returns true when there's only one value in the specified column. And we want to run this against our image index table. And this is going to be against the name column. If has one value, okay, then data image / I'm working with JPEG images, so I'm going to put JPEG base 64, comma, space, close that string, and then we're going to put and we're going to concatenate now along with this. So so now that we have the prefix to our image, we're going to concatenate all the different parts of our picture. So we're going to concatenate X because this is a measure. The table is going to be image index, comma, image index pic, which is all the 30,000 string characters that we're going to piece back together using what delimiter. In this case, it's a comma delimiter, and we're going to order by our index. And that's why we have the index, so that we make sure that we combine all these pieces in the correct sequence. So by our index, and it's going to be ascending. So comma, ascending, and we're going to close parentheses on the concatenate X. And then we have a close parentheses on our if statement. And then we're going to return our image. Now, if you don't understand what this is doing, don't worry too much about it. Follow the blog. They have the code in there. I've also put this code in the description. There's two parts to method number 3. One is importing the data, and that function is there. And then this is the measure, the calculated measure that then combines our image together. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. So now I have this image that it's not going to show here, but if we look at our pic, remember that what the image is doing, it's taking this and saying, okay, is name one, for all the name ones, concatenate these values in this order. Okay, and it essentially returns that into one row. But now what we got to do is now we got to join this into our real estate. And we're going to do it very similar to method number 2, where I'm going to create a column here that is my image key, and image key is going to equal my house number, because that's also the way that my image is saved. So it's going to be house number and .jpeg. I hit enter. I'm going to go to, oh, we don't want that. I'm going to go to my relationships here, and I'm going to combine my image index. We don't need this one. This one's for method number 2. Using the name into my image key. Okay, now that those are combined, any filtering that I do on the real estate column will also filter my image. Here's another part that's going to differ. All right, get me out of this thing. All right. I've tested this on method number 3, and method number 3, it will not work if you use a simple image. So if I use a simple image, I am not able to grab my newly created image and bring it in here, because for some reason it does not use it cannot take a measure. It has to be a column that it uses in there. Okay, I've tried. So I did find, and it's also in the blog, if you use Image Pro by CloudScope from the marketplace, so this custom visual, let's go do that. Here it is. So Image Pro by CloudScope, you can use a measure as your image URL. So if I go to my image here, remember, make sure that it's an image URL. And we're going to go ahead and drag that into our image URL here. Bam. So there it is. Now it renders the entire image. So if I go to picture 2 in Scottsdale, Arizona, $5 million house. This house is 5 bedrooms, 7 baths. If I go to 4 in California, here's my California home. If I go to 3, here's my Texas home. Okay. And remember, we weren't able, so image number 4, we weren't able to do that with methods 1 and methods 2 because when you convert it to your base 64, the amount of text in that column, it's too big for Excel, it's too big for Power BI. So that's why there's that blog that explains how to do it using this method number 3, which is, remember, splitting it out by, chunks of 30,000 and then recombining it using this function here. Once recombined, you then create sort of a foreign key column. And remember, the foreign key for me is take the house number and add .jpeg to it, because that's going to match the name of my pictures. Joining those two together, and now using Image Pro by CloudScope and bringing in that new measure that combines them so that I can now render the entire image. And that's how we get a very large image, or an image that, if you're not able to get it loaded using image methods number 1 or method number 2, right? If it only shows part of the image, it's because that binary conversion to base 64, it's too large. So you might have to resort to method number 3. It sounds tedious, it sounds annoying, but I do have both the functions that you need to do this in the description, so that should be a lot easier. I also have both of the blog links on how to do this in the description, so you can follow along step by step there. In case I've gone too quick or I didn't explain something correctly, please let me know in the comments if you have any questions on any of this. You can shoot me an email. I can post my email, and if you're having any problems with loading your images, then I can try to help you out. That is the 3 methods on how we can load a local image, right, an image not on the web, into a table using Power BI so that we can have it available for visualization. So thank you for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you guys next time.